Hey y'all, Mike with Cardboard Kingdom. Welcome back to another Disney Lorcana video. Today we're discussing all things rarity. Rarity is one of the most important aspects when you think about these TCGs, specifically Lorcana, as a hobby and as a collectible. We always have to keep rarity top of mind. So with that being said, today we're going to do a little bit of a deep dive. Let's get into it. All right, guys. So when we think about rarity amongst Disney Lorcana, I really want to talk about three specific things today. I want to talk about rarity as a concept first, and just why does it matter to collectibles? Why does that matter to us within the Lorcana hobby? I want to give you some specific examples from other TCGs where maybe we can apply rarity and look at the price trajectory of these things over time. And then how can we correlate that back to Lorcana? And then last but not least, I want to do a deep dive on which cards in Lorcana are the most rare. Where does rarity versus scarcity matter? And talk about the overall picture of, a set card versus an organized play promo versus maybe a trophy promo versus maybe a D23 2022 promo, and how do all of those fit into this rarity puzzle. So with that being said, we're going to start with rarity as a concept, just to kind of give us a base layer of understanding. All right, guys, so when we think about Lorcana as a future collectible, we really want to prioritize rarity for a multitude of reasons. First and foremost, rarity is truly what drives demand. When something is hard to get, it's innate in us as humans. We want to go get it. Whether that's to complete a goal of a certain, set of cards, whether that's to go after and get a certain, one of one card. You want to be the only person in the world that has this card. You want to be one of the only 100 people in the world that has this completed set and a high grade. That is what drives this entire industry. And so we want to keep that front of mind as we're making purchase decisions, and as Lorcana grows as a collectible. How can we best position ourselves should the collector base continue to just grow organically? Should we see some sort of black swan event? How can we be best positioned with rarity front of mind to really see higher highs within our collection, but then also limit the lows that we see? For a rare item, it's going to be much easier to keep a price afloat at a certain threshold because it's so limited in the amount of buyers. There's just a lot less buyers needed to keep that item at a higher price point. Versus if you see something that a card, maybe it's at a very high right now, but it's truly not that rare, the likelihood that we see downward trajectory should we go through some sort of recession, bear market, etc., the floor is going to fall out from under that card a lot quicker than something that has a lot less limited quantity and is inherently more rare, because once again, you just do not need the same subset of buyers to protect the price of that card. You just need a finite amount when you have a finite limited card. And so that's why we want to keep rarity top of mind as we're going through about our Lorcana collection, as we're buying cards and as we're spending our money. Anytime we can prioritize rarity over something else, should we kind of value two things in the same light in terms of how much do I enjoy this card, how much do I want to add this card to our collection? Rarity should be a key indicator whenever we're making those decisions. All right, guys, so some examples of rarity and why rarity is so fascinating is you can even look, like, for example, in my life, I have a 6-year-old daughter and a 3-year-old son who often fight over items that are rare at the time to them. They just might want it. Like, my son might want it only to prevent my daughter from having it. He might have no interest in this particular toy or whatever he's going after, but the idea that he has it and she doesn't, that gives him all that he needs to motivate him to go get that item. I'm sure you guys deal with that amongst your own family lives as well. Rarity is not something new. It's not something unique to TCGs. But where we can apply rarity and really see the value of rarity is when we look at something like the Pokemon Illustrator. This is one of the rarest cards in all of Pokemon. I almost said Lorcana, and it is one of the most valuable cards in all of Pokemon. Now, this is a card back in like 2006, 7, 8 and 9 was maybe going for around $10,000 to $20,000. It was known to be a rare card, but there wasn't really any sort of nostalgia associated with it. A lot of people were completing sets and going after old vintage cards, and they weren't really keyed in on a card like this because it just took a little bit of a deeper dive to get to. Very similar, we could look like trophy cards within Lorcana to provide kind of an example there. These cards that are limited, you're not going to find them in a booster pack, and ultimately there's a specific way of how you go about obtaining them. And so for the example of the Illustrator, this was a card that once again was being bought. I think the lowest public sale was a $9,000 sale. Most recently, I think Logan Paul, it's known that he paid $5 million for an Illustrator that was graded in a PSA 10. So you're talking about a card that was, just 15 years ago is being sold for around, let's just say, $10,000-$20,000, keep it even. And then now, fast forward 15 years, is now selling for $5 million in a high grade. And so that really speaks to the availability and the potential of rarity. Every card in Pokemon has gone up. You would have been good if you bought any card in 08 or 09. You could have bought a bunch of Charizards, could have bought a bunch of set cards. No matter what card you bought at that time, it was going to increase in value. But if you would have just saved up and bought the more rare cards, you would have seen vastly exponential higher gains if you were to attack rarity as it relates to Pokemon. Now, I don't want to sit here and say that you only need to buy rare cards. You have to buy what you like, because at the end of the day, rare cards can go down in value too. And so the number one priority is always, as you're building your collection, is what do I like? What's going to bring me joy? What goal do I have right now? And going about it with that mindset. Now, where we can apply rarity is maybe as you're setting up your next goal, you just completed one, or you're looking for a new goal. Applying rarity to that goal is going to benefit you in the long term, but not at the expense of your joy. So you have to find a balance for those two things, right? Don't only go after rarity because you might not like it, right? And you might burn yourself out. When you're going after rare goals, like a lot of my goals that I've had, I've already been working on for a year and I'm still nowhere near done with them. And so these goals can take a long time. So it's something that, maybe you have your overarching more rare goal, but then you also have a subset of goals that are a little bit more easy to obtain. And I think you have to have some sort of mix there, but the illustrator gives us an example of, or it illustrates, pun intended, an example of whenever you prioritize rarity, going out, spend $10,000 on a illustrator. Maybe in this case, it's a Golden Mickey or a D23 2022 Elsa Snow Queen. Those cards in 15 years from now, they may be $100,000 card. We don't know that, right? They may be a $0 card. That's the risk of Lorcana and the risk versus reward aspect of Lorcana, which makes it very special. But that paints the rarity picture and how we can apply it from Pokemon to Lorcana. Alright guys, so last thing before we get into the specific topic of in Lorcana, which cards are the most rare, which cards are the least rare, and we look through some specific examples there, I think it is important to note that the highs of, a Pokemon Illustrator card, those are likely never going to exist in Lorcana at the same scale. The reason for that being is there just is not that many cards in Lorcana that are truly that rare. When you talk about even the golden serialized Mickey, it was printed out of 500, or it's serialized out of 500. When you talk about the D23 Elsa, that is a card that has a 900 total population. There are probably 1,000 different Pokemon cards that have less than a 900 total print count. And so the fact that they have those truly rare items, that there's just not a lot of them out there, in combination with this massive collector base, it gives them the ability for these cards to truly scale up significantly over time. Now, there's rarity in Lorcana, and there's going to be opportunities for us to best position ourselves, but I do just want to make sure that there's a distinction between the overall rarity and the total capability of the rarity amongst Lorcana and other TCGs like Pokemon. We obviously have one-offs like the 1-of-1 Golden Mickey that's going to be awarded at Worlds. That card is going to go for an obscene amount of money should it be sold, and that card it's not going to be able to be swept under the radar like a lot of Pokemon cards are. The entire world has changed. The ecosystem of these TCGs as collectibles has changed, and so the likelihood that you're ever going to get your hands on that 1-of-1 is just simply not possible. No matter how deep you are down the rabbit hole, the likelihood that you're going to have the capital to pursue that card is slim to none. And so we have to get creative about where we can apply rarity with our specific budgets and our specific goals, and how does that work within Lorcana. So with all of those, the caveats and the groundwork and everything laid now, let's get into what cards in Lorcana are the most rare, which cards are the least rare, and what am I prioritizing as I look at these cards. Alright guys, we have to start the rarity conversation amongst the set cards within Lorcana. These are the most widely available cards. They are the cards you can get out of a booster pack, and the cool thing about the set cards is they tell us inherently how rare they are. Is it a common? Is it an uncommon? Is it a rare, a super rare, a legendary, or an enchanted? We know after seeing these rarity symbols and opening these packs how likely we are to get them, thus giving us a market value, right, that we all dictate is the price of these cards based on how rare they are to get. And so that's where you get, the rarity tiers within set cards are very well defined based on the indicator in the bottom. Now, what is different about set cards is they're never going to be inherently the most rare, even the enchanted cards, right? These cards are incredibly hard to pull. These cards are damn near impossible to pull, right? The likelihood that you're going to pull an enchanted is very slim. The likelihood that you're going to pull your chase card out of a pack is even more slim. I mean, you're talking a minute % chance that you're going to be able to pull this card. With that being being said, there is way more Tamatoas out there than a lot of promos. Now, the set cards is really where scarcity can play a part, because while this Tamatoa is not that truly rare, it is very scarce in the sense that the demand for this card is very high. We see the same thing with the Elsa, Cinderella, some of these higher chase cards out of any given set. They're all printed to a very high amount. There is a relatively high amount of these cards out there in existence, but there's a lot of demand to go with it. And so while these cards might be a little bit less rare than some of the promos we're going to talk about, some of the trophy cards we're going to talk about, the fact that the demand is so high for these cards, booster pack cards are what people know. Booster pack cards a lot of times are what people want. That's what they set their goals around. That drives up the scarcity of this card. So the fact that a Tamatoa can just come out, but there is so much demand for it, this card will see a $500 price point for a few days initially after release, because the supply and demand just simply do not make sense yet. And so that is where you can see scarcity really start to play a part as it relates specifically to set cards. While they're not that rare, they truly can become rare because people just simply don't want to sell them. So that is where we start today's conversation in terms of set cards and rarity within Disney Lorcana. All right, guys, now as we talk about rarity specifically for set cards, we're really going to be able to carry this principle on forward for all the rest of the cards that we talk about today. We have to look at something called conditional rarity. Conditional rarity is where you take a card like the Cinderella, that obviously is a rare in the sense of the fact that it's an enchanted foil, but we know that it's not very rare in the sense that there are a lot of them out there. We can then send that card to a third-party agency, in this case PSA, to have them assess the condition of this card and give it a grade. In this case, this card was able to get the PSA 10, which stands for Gem Mint. It's the highest grade available. And so now this Cinderella has something over this Cinderella called conditional rarity. While there is the same amount of cards of these two cards out there in existence, they're the exact same card from the exact same set, the fact that this one has been assessed by a third-party company and has been given the highest grade possible as it relates to the condition adds what's called conditional rarity. Now, not everyone cares about conditional rarity. The graded card market is a subsector of the overall regular market of the ungraded card, but it does add another layer. There are a lot of collectors who do collect graded cards specifically because they want the chase of collecting the card in the highest condition. And so once again, this is something we can apply to set cards, to organized play promos, to league play promos, to trophy cards, etc. You can kind of carry this principle on throughout the rest of the video today, but this is a very important indicator where even set cards can become more rare based on conditional rarity. All right, guys, the next stop within our rarity journey in Disney Lorcana is going to be the promo section. Now, we're going to break this up a little bit. We're going to talk about first some readily available promos that are a little bit more affordable and less rare, and then we're going to do a midpoint of like event exclusive promos, and then we're going to talk about our higher end promos, trophy cards, very exclusive cards, etc., kind of the grails of rarity within Disney Lorcana. To start in this particular section, though, these cards are going to be rare in the sense that they are promo, so they don't come out of a booster pack, so we like that. We think about rarity as a concept. In addition, a lot of these cards are very readily available at a fair price point. So when you look at something like a card that I've talked a lot about on my channel, the Organized Play Cinderella from the second Organized Play kit, this is a card that has some unique kind of art in the text box. It's cold foil. It's a Cinderella. This is a card that I'm a big proponent of. I have a lot of them, but it is not that rare in the grand scheme of things of other promos. This card has been readily available. I was buying it at the start of my collector's journey for 13 cents. I was able to buy quantities of 50 at a time. Now this card is somewhere around 50 cents, but it still does not have a significant market premium, and it never will, simply due to the fact that although it's an iconic IP, it's cold foil, it's a promo, it's got a lot going for it, it is just readily available. And so the overall ceiling for this card is very, very low. Whenever we compare that to something like a promo that has the same indicator at the bottom, but it is the Moana movie promo release from China, this card is something that in the United States and amongst my fellow collectors like yourselves might be a card that's a little bit more rare, even though it comes in the same, it's got the same promo indicator, it's still readily available. This card is going to go for a little bit more than the Cinderella because it is just inherently more rare. So in Lorcana, it's always good to just, as a guide, keep in mind that that this promo indicator is always going to be the most readily available amongst all of the promos. Now, there is different variants. Once again, the Stitch is always going to command more of a premium than the Cinderella, and so there's levels to it, given to the fact that the Stitch comes out of a specific box and a specific set. There's only a finite number of those products that were made. Now, sure, it's a lot, and there's plenty out there right now, but as we think about Lorcana and as we think about the collectible journey of Lorcana, these cards are going to become more and more rare, where I'm able to get them for $1. 5 years from now, they might be $5. And so these are things that I'm trying to accumulate large positions in as we're in the current market now where things are readily available. My values and what I assess these cards to be worth misalign to a dramatic extent of what I think they could be. And so I'm willing to pay the market price for pretty much every card on this screen, and even go through things like, go for things like conditional rarity for these cards, because I think that's another aspect that you can make these promos even more rare. And once again, as the collector base grows and as that subset of the overall kind of ecosystem of the graded market comes into play, I think that these promos people are gonna want these cards in that graded conditional rarity that we discussed. And so overall, I want to be well positioned as we think about these cards in the future. So this is the base layer of promos. These are the most readily available promos. These promos with this indicator should be the cheapest promos that you see out there, but that does not mean they're worthless. Their highs are going to be capped to a certain extent because they typically are readily available. Once again, this paints a good illustration where this card might be, 50 cents right now or $1. This card might be $2 to $3. This card might be $5 in a raw copy. It might be $50 in a PSA 10. And then these cards, maybe they're 10 or so dollars, right? It just kind of depends on rarity amongst the specific symbol. But ideally, this indicator for the rarity cards are going to be the least rare of the promos. All right, guys, next up on our rarity journey, we're going to do kind of a mid-tier of promos for Disney Lorcana, and we're going to stop at event exclusive or a specific type of promos. So on the screen here, you see two different promos. You see a Mickey Mouse Musketeer from the Gen Con 2023 convention, which you see indicated on the stamp at the bottom, obviously illustrated on the label as well. Beside it, you see the Brave Little Tailor from the D23 convention that happened in 2024. So this card, just give you some baseline facts here, is going to be a little bit more rare in terms of less quantity. It's a little bit older, and so it's got a very unique indicator. And so these are things that we're looking at as fundamentals that would give this card a really good collectible future when we think about the rarity of the card. Now, these two cards are great illustrations of rarity versus scarcity, because this card is older. There's a more finite amount, and so you would think that this card is going to command a bigger premium moving forward, which it very well might be. You might be able to see that play out, and we'll continue to monitor it over the years. Right now, I think this card goes for a little bit more than this card, but it's not a very significant multiplier by any means. Now, this card going to be a lot more readily available, and it's a lot newer. So those two things inherently make it a lot less collectible and less rare. But whenever we apply scarcity to these two cards, you think about this card. It's the Mickey art, so it's an iconic IP. It's a specific event. It's older, so it's got a good baseline going for it. But when we compare these two cards side by side, one is drastically more aesthetically appealing than the other, and that would be the Brave Little Tailor Mickey art. In combination with that, this is the face of the brand. Brave Little Tailor is all over all of the marketing materials. It was in the first chapter. It is on the trophy card, right, for the serialized 1 of 500. It is going to be on the 1 of 1 Worlds trophy from 2025. And so this art truly is the face of the brand. This is the Pikachu of Lorcana. So that is going to give it some inherent scarcity and overall demand, because people are going to want this card to a greater extent than possibly want this card. It is also the first Brave Little Tailor that got the enchanted foiling that is making it pop there. As we show it with the lighting, this card truly pops and stands out much more significantly than its counterpart at the Gen Con 2023 Mickey Musketeer. And so that's where rarity and scarcity play a factor, where this card might not be near as rare, but it's a little bit more scarce because more people want it. And so this is something that you'll see in all the different tiers, where we're talking about kind of our lower tier promos, our higher tier promos, our set cards. There's always going to be this kind of scarcity and rarity equilibrium, and these two cards illustrate two vastly different rarity tiers, but very similar price points due to scarcity. All right, guys, as we finish this Rarity World Tour of Lorcana, our second to final stop here would be our trophy card section. Now, I do have some trophy cards outside of this section that would be more in the Grail conversation, which is what we'll finish with. But when we talk about rarity amongst trophy cards, these are inherently going to be some of the most rare cards that we have the ability to possess in Lorcana. I have the Rockstar Stitch here, which is one of my favorite cards if you've been around the channel. This is a card that was the first trophy card ever awarded. It's an iconic art. The card looks amazing. It's done by my personal favorite illustrator, and so this card holds a lot of value in my heart and has a lot of scarcity due to the fact that a lot of people want this card. And so this card is more readily available than any other trophy card in Lorcana, in my opinion, but it also has a lot going for it in terms of it's got a lot of demand and it's also very hard to grade. So the conditional rarity is a card in this, for this particular card in this instance, is one that gives it a pretty decent bump. Now, other cards that would fall within this tier if you are looking to expand your trophy card collection would be the Cinderella Stout-Hearted foil promo from the first season of the DLC events. In addition, the Rapunzel Gift with Healing promo from the DLC events. These cards are cards that are now most likely out of rotation that have very finite quantities available to them. Some other cards that might be honorable mentions here might be from the DLC championships events. So the EU and NA championships, things like the Invited to the Ball or Elsa's Ice Palace would also fall within this tier that I feel like are trophy cards. They're very rare. They're very sought after. They just might not be the true grails of the community due to overall demand and the total population of them available. But overall, the trophy card tier is an amazing tier to expose yourself to because some of these cards, like the Rapunzel Gift with Healing, like the Rockstar Stitch, are not going to be printed ever again in a lot of cases. And so therefore, the quantity that's out there, whether it's 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, they have a finite amount, and they also have a lot of scarcity to them because they have a very high desirability. So therefore, these will be the second to the last stop, the second most valuable tier. Obviously, a wide-ranging value when you look at the Rapunzel Gifted with Healing versus the Rockstar Stitch. Two very different tiers there, but I feel like they fall within the same tier of trophy card promos. All right, guys, next up in our Disney Lorcana Rarity World Tour, we're going to talk about the grails of the hobby. 3 to 4 cards that truly stand out amongst their peers that are the rarest, the most scarce, that as we see Lorcana grow as a collectible and it ages as a collectible and we get a wider swath of collectors coming into the Lorcana market, these are the cards that they're going to go after. They're the shiniest of the shiny, they're the hardest to obtain, and therefore they're going to accelerate much faster than every other card that we've talked about today. All right, guys, as we start to talk about grails, the first card I want to talk about today and spend a little bit of time on is the D23 2022 Elsa Snow Queen. When we talk about rarity, scarcity, fundamentals, this card has all of it. And we think about Lorcana growing as a collectible over time, this is going to be one of the cards that accelerates much faster than any of the other cards that we've talked about so far today. Anytime I'm talking about Grail cards, I always keep front of mind S.M. Pratt's old moniker for all my S.M. Pratt fans out there. The older, the rarer, the minter, the better is a great way to think about collectibles as a whole, especially as it relates to Grail cards. When we talk about this card, there was only 900 in existence. It was a very finite print amount. They're making it incredibly rare. In addition to that, the card looks amazing. The enchanted foil, the Elsa art shining through there, and it is also very hard to grade. So this card gets a gem mint grade right now at about 60% of the time. We are very likely to see that number come down over time. So that then limits, there's only 900, of total population. In terms of gem mint quantity, maybe that ends around 500, maybe it ends around 600. There's going to be a very finite number of truly gem mint copies of this card. When you tie that into the fact that these were the first ever cards available in Disney Lorcana, this is what they went to market with. This collector's box set are the oldest cards. You are not going to find any other cards in Disney Lorcana that have the 2022 dated stamp on any sort of graded card, because these are it was limited to a total of 7 cards, Elsa being by far the most valuable and the biggest chase of those cards. In addition, you see the D23 stamp down at the bottom, and then the widely renowned first edition stamp. Once again, one of only 7 cards that have these 2 specific stamps down at the bottom, thus giving it everything we're looking for as it relates to a Grail card. And then once again, as we think of Lorcana aging, and as we think of Lorcana as a collectible, we think about five years down the road, we think about 10 years down the road, we think of a wider swath of collectors coming into the hobby, more serious collectors. Now that Lorcana is more established, this is a card that is poised to accelerate in value at an extremely high rate, in my opinion. All right, guys, bringing our rarity guide to a close. We have 3 trophy cards that we're going to talk about, or Grail cards that fit within the Grail moniker. First up, the serialized out of 500 golden Brave Little Tailor Mickey Mouse. This is a trophy card that is awarded to all of the top finishers, whether it be there's a variance between top 4 or top 8, depending how many competitors participate in the events at any Disney Lorcana Challenge event or the Disney Lorcana Championship events that we've seen for both NA as well as EU. This card is serialized out of 500, so we obviously assume that there's going to be a total population of this card of being 500, which means that this card is going to be very, very rare. As we think about Lorcana growing as a collectible, it's one of those shiny balls or cards you see that you really, really want to go and get, that you're just drawn to because of the prominence and the rarity that this card has. A couple caveats for this card that I would just recommend proceeding with caution. First and foremost, we are nowhere near the total amount of supply out on the market versus what's currently out there. So right now there might be close to like 150 to 200 of these cards on the market. There's going to be a lot more of them. And so I would exercise caution going out and getting this card. This is a card that we saw go for $40,000 in the open market whenever it was first released after the first couple of challenge events. It is now selling for much closer to $10,000 to $15,000. So it's a card that we just truly need to give it some time to fully bake. Now, the counterpoint to that could be if we see any sort of widespread growth of the collector base of Lorcana, this is a card that the scarcity could really come into play and drive it to new highs, even though we don't have the total population out on the market. So there's definitely a counter argument there. And then the last thing to keep in mind with this card is there is not much of a conditional rarity as it applies to the Golden Mickey. Plain and simple, these cards, when they're awarded, are in fantastic condition. The majority of the cards are either getting a pristine 10, if the grading company that they grade with offers that, or a PSA Gem Mint 10. We have seen very, very few cards come in below a Gem Mint grade, if any. And so whenever you're talking about this card, I would definitely not give it a massive multiplier for a Gem Mint grade versus a raw copy, because likelihood is that raw copy is going to get a Gem Mint grade. So a couple things to keep in mind for this particular card, but with that being said, absolutely falls within the Grail tier and one of the most valuable cards in Disney Lorcana, and one of those cards that is going to accelerate at a very high rate. Moving on, guys, to the Baymax Armored Companion, specifically the foil promo that was awarded to the top 8 at both the NA Championships and the EU Championships. This card has a very sneaky proposition of being one of the most valuable cards in Disney Lorcana, very significantly more valuable than both the Golden Mickey and the D23 Elsa. As of right now, the total population of this card is 16. Now, we do expect more to be awarded at the World Championships here later in 2025, but we don't know much beyond that point. So if another, 8 are awarded, or another 16 are awarded, or maybe a number like 40, 50 are awarded, this card is still going to see a population below 100, giving it an extremely, extremely rarity edge over the other 2 Grails that we've talked about. Now, similar to the Golden Mickey, we don't know how long these are going to be awarded. So I would say proceed with caution. This is very likely to continue to be awarded as we move into 2026, but we don't know that for a fact. And if this does end with a print quantity of sub 100, sub 200, even sub 300, we could see this card vastly appreciate in value due to that rarity, right? Everything we've talked about today, this card has as much potential as any card that we've talked about to truly be one of the most valuable cards in all of Disney Lorcana. And rounding us out here, guys, the golden 1-of-1 serialized Mickey that's going to be awarded to this year's 2025 Worlds winner. This card is, in my opinion, going to go down when we apply some time to this game and we think about how well the Lorcana Lorcana and Ravensburger team is delivering right now, if they continue down that path and Lorcana grows as a collectible, I could easily see this being the most valuable trading card ever printed. I think that this card is going to command a premium of hundreds of thousands of dollars the second that it is awarded, and the more the time comes in and Lorcana continues to grow, we are talking about a card that has the potential to be worth millions of dollars. The only one of one in Disney Lorcana. It's going to be the oldest one of one in Disney Lorcana. It's going to be the first World's winner. Whoever is awarded this card, should they go to sell it, is going to be an absolute life-changing amount of money, thus being the most valuable card in all of Lorcana, the most rare card in all of Lorcana, and it makes sense that we end our rarity and Grail discussion here with what I presume to be one of the most valuable trading cards ever printed. So that's going to be the end of our rarity guide today. We've talked about something as unrare as our least rare cards, the commons that come from set cards, going up even to enchanteds, moving over to our lower tier promos, our mid tier promos, some of our higher tier promos like the Rockstar Stitch and Rapunzel Gifted with Healing, and then finishing out with our Grail category dating back to the D23 2022 Elsa up to the serialized Mickeys, going through the one of one, just true rarity. I mean, you're talking one, right? I'm talking like 600 gem mint grade Elsas. We're talking one here. So the multiplier for this card is, I mean, we can't even comprehend how big this is going to be off the back of Worlds, all the hype that's going to come with it. This card is going to reset the entire market. It is going to sell for an insane amount of money. So kudos to whoever wins that. Once again, just going to be a truly life-changing sum of money that is coming after them for a game that's, it started a year and a half ago with the first chapter, right? Obviously, it's been in. We had the 2022 promos and we had demos and things like that. There's been a lot going into that. It hasn't truly been around for only a year and a half. But a game that's been around for a year and a half in terms of organized play, set releases, etc., for them to deliver at such a high level and have a card like this that's going to be out on the open market, I do not think that we are ready for what this card is going to command. So thank you all for watching, guys. If you enjoyed this video, please like, comment, subscribe. I typically don't ask for that stuff, but this video took a lot went into it, right, to put it all together, talk about all the different tiers, so on and so on. So I would greatly appreciate any support on that front. And with that being said, we'll be back with some more content soon. Thanks, guys.